You were looking a little unkempt. Is it time for another face trim? You probably disagree. Might be time for another face trim, little girl. You have hair going everywhere. Hello, Penguin. Hello, Penguin. Hello, BookTube. And welcome to your Daily Penguin. We're doing a tour of my Penguin Classic wall. You're all pretty much honorary penguins at this point, aren't you? We're doing a tour of my wall, and we have been all year. What a fun time this has been, touring all these penguins. We're now halfway through the month of November. A month more of videos to make for 2020. And for the rest of November, I'm going to try and concentrate on nonfiction. Because it's Nonfiction November. A BookTube event that was created by Olive at a Book Olive, and a bunch of other great hosts are keeping it going this time around with social media and Goodreads and videos and a TikTok, the whole 9 yards, to get you to celebrate nonfiction, to get you to understand or to believe, if you have very little association with it and all that association is bad, that nonfiction is actually a font of wonders. It's actually a fantastic thing to read. It's the better side of the street. Once you start to become conversant in some kind of nonfiction, once you start to really have the ground under your feet on some kind of nonfiction, then suddenly you realize how thin most fiction is, and you don't go back. And so for the rest of November, for the Daily Penguin, instead of just picking at random, I'm going to still pick at random. I'm still letting my fingers only move a little bit of a way on any shelf. I'm not looking around, because I worry that if I do a global look like that, I will start to thematize or organize or make a syllabus out of this thing, and I don't want to do that. So I found just the next volume, and it's a Penguin Classic Deluxe edition, one of two for this author. This is the collected essays of Arthur Miller. And this is kind of sort of the companion volume to the absolutely gorgeous collected plays of Arthur Miller that was also in a Penguin Classic Deluxe edition. And I got both of them from the publisher. And I don't believe I still have that gorgeous collected plays of Arthur Miller. I don't believe I still own a physical copy of it. I have it on ebook. But I think I sent the physical copy to one of you who was a theater major or a theater wonk or something like that. And the reason why I was willing to do that was because I love sending books to people, and I miss that. I really do. I need to reinstate that in 2021. I stopped it because of the pandemic, because it seems like just an egregious risk, not just to me, but to everybody. It seemed like just such an egregious thing to be sending books to bookworms who aren't going to get to them right away and who don't need them any more than coals to Newcastle. It seemed like such a huge, outlandish, unnecessary risk that I just stopped doing it. I used to go to the post office a couple of times a week. And I haven't resumed that, even though the post offices in my neck of the woods were in full operation that whole time. And still are. And they have all sorts of precautions set up. The one in Chinatown here in Boston has plexiglass screens everywhere. The clerks have trays that they slide out to you so that you're not ever coming anywhere near close contact with them. They have sanitary supplies to clean everything on a regular basis, so that if you are a pedestrian and you are just going in and you yourself are being careful, taking precautions, don't touch your face, maintain social distancing, wear a mask. If you're doing those simple things and they're doing what they're doing, you're not really risking all that much. So I need to reinstate that in 2021. But I believe that's what I did with the collected plays. And that will signal to you in a little bit of a way, what I might think of this volume. The long and the short of it is that I don't esteem this author as highly as so many Americans have esteemed him. And more importantly, maybe as much as he esteemed himself. I know that shouldn't matter. It should be the words on the page and only the words on the page. But nevertheless, I've always found his extreme intrusive fussiness in his plays to be counteractive to the reading experience. Maybe not to the viewing experience. I've seen A View from the Bridge and The Crucible and even Death of a Salesman. Oh, God. Don't get me started. I've seen those things on stage many times, and a few other, I haven't seen all of Arthur Miller on stage, but I've seen a few others, And I admit they are effective in a very ham-handed way. They are effective. But as a written experience, which was what that whole beautiful Penguin Classic Deluxe volume was all about, much less so. Maybe that will change if I ever grow older, but I doubt it. And when I got that volume, I also got the collected essays, and I wondered if maybe they had aged better in my mind, because Miller wrote a couple of volumes of essays, three volumes of essays, I think, in his career, collected them, oversaw their collection, or just after he died, they were collected. I had read collected Arthur Miller essays before, including all of the ones that are in this volume, and I wondered if maybe the passage of time had changed that. But the passage of time, although it does work organic changes on my estimation of a whole bunch of authors, doesn't seem to be affecting this author. Certainly my estimation of his dramas have not gone up any. And I was hoping for more from the essays. But far too many of these essays are written in the register of, I am a great man. I am taking time out from doing great man stuff in order to write this essay. I'm not going to work all that hard on it, but I nevertheless expect veneration. I expect that you will know. I will imbue my prose with the awareness that a great man is taking time off his day to dash off thoughts from the top of his head about any number of subjects. He writes about his own plays quite a bit in this volume. Writes about American political scene of his day. Writes about juvenile delinquency, which was a big deal in his day. Writes about the Jewish identity and about Jewish writing. There are a couple of essays on that heading that are fairly effective. I'll never forget the first time I forget what the name of the essay is. It's in this volume, where he writes about how he had been writing about, thinking about, experiencing, talking about all sorts of facets of the Jewish existence, of Jewish life in America, and then Hitler happened. And suddenly he had the line, "Suddenly I myself felt unsafe." The thing that he reflects on in that essay and a couple of other essays in a couple of other places, and that you can see very clearly in a lot of the plays, is not so much the evil of the persecution as the stolid, stoic indifference of everyone else, of the onlookers. A thing that we know for a fact, for a documentary fact, struck many Jews in 1930s Germany more than anything else. A lot of them had been raised on family stories of oppression or double standards in other countries. And suddenly their own neighbors were just blandly looking on while they were told, you can no longer own a pet, and you have to euthanize the pet you have. You can no longer ride public transportation. You can no longer do it. You have to identify yourself, and once you do, you are forbidden to ride public transportation. So it's a boiling hot day, and you have to get to your job at a warehouse in downtown, and you and your neighbor 2 houses over both ride the bus. Only you're not allowed to anymore. And your neighbor is fine with that. So there are effective bits in here, but not enough to tempt, and probably not enough to keep this volume. I mean, this is a lovely Penguin Classic Deluxe edition. The artwork here is by Matt Yee, and it's on the flaps there. You have all the accoutrements of the American writer in the mid-50s. There you have a cityscape in the background, and more. So this is one big cityscape there. Quite nice. Not at all nice enough to justify a $35 price tag for this paperback, but nevertheless, I never revisit this work. And when I had ratty little copies of the previous individual collected essays, I never revisited those either. And it's a bad idea to keep a book on your shelf, because, at least for me, it's a bad idea to keep a book on my shelf because I think that someday I might change my mind and want to revisit it. No. If that happens, well, I'll take advantage of the bookish subculture and find a copy. But the owning should follow the wanting, not precede it. So I'm thinking that now about a lot of books. I guess there's a great deal of tenantry tumult here at Hyde Cottage, and that's making me rethink everything. I'm looking at everything here and thinking, all right, do you want this? Do you really want this book? And it's connected to thoughts that I've had and expressed on this channel many times before. Is it really necessary? I know hardly any of you have actually been in this little room, but is it really necessary for any one person with access to the internet to own more physical copies than just will fit in this little room? Is that really necessary? I mean, here, can I show you? You've got the door and the shoulder bag that I hardly ever use anymore because I don't go anywhere, and then you've got shelves. It's just a square room of shelves with plants and teddy bears and Stella Luna and the Elephant of Surprise and it's, can you make out that? Okay, well, I'm temporarily storing clothes on a shelf there, but that's got to change because shelves are for books. But this is a lot of books. I mean, it's not a very big room, but it's a lot of books for one person. And yet, I have rooms of other rooms full of books. Is that really necessary? Or is this enough space for books? And if it is, it would have to be condensed quite a bit, which is what led me to talk about the Penguin wall. It's an ostentatious amount of space. Is every book on that wall pulling its weight? Is every book on that wall necessary to be there? This is a perfect example of something that is very pretty. It's very nice. Got the French flaps and the deckled edges. But I never go back to it. So maybe it's not. So your Penguin... Sorry, that was a digression that had nothing to do with Penguin Classic. Your Penguin Classic for today isn't really a recommend. It isn't really a recommend. Arthur Miller loved the sound of his own voice. You can tell that in his plays and in his essays. He always talked before he spoke, and sometimes wrote after he spoke, but not always. And when he was writing this and everything else that he wrote, he was doing it with one eye fixed on an invisible bust of George Bernard Shaw. Shaw was always in his mind, because Shaw was a poet, a playwright who was really popular, well staged in his day, who also wrote endless amounts of prose on every subject under the sun, political, literary, you name it. The amount of Shaw is just vast that we have, and was considered a profound public intellectual. There was nothing that Arthur Miller wanted more in the world than to be George Bernard Shaw and to be a public intellectual. And that's not the kind of thing that you can want. If you want it, then that's bad. It has to be sort of bestowed on you. I don't know. This is a whole nother subject. I don't know how I could recommend these essays. I would suggest what I always do, really, any recommendation, is to try one of them. I'm sure that one or two of these things are available online for free. Try one of them and see if you like the voice. Maybe it'll appeal to you more than it's ever appealed to me. But it's not me jumping up and down in my seat begging you to read this thing right away, like so many of my Penguin recommendations are. And maybe we'll hit another one of those tomorrow. Because like I say, I'm not planning really exhaustively ahead of time. But for today, I'm certainly not telling you to go out and spend $35 on this paperback unless you are an Arthur Miller fanatic and didn't know this existed. In which case, you have to have this. And you also have to have that collected plays. That volume is the most beautiful collected Arthur Miller volume that's ever been done by a long shot. And probably forever. So if you're an Arthur Miller fan and you didn't know that Penguin Classic Deluxe edition, I wish I could show it to you, but I don't have it. Then you definitely have to have that. That's a keeper if you're a fan of this author. But we'll move on. We'll move on tomorrow and see if we can't find somebody that makes Steve squeal a little. And in the meantime, this book will, in addition to not really functioning as a Penguin Classic recommend, it also functions as something. Yeah, it's functioning in my mind. It and many other books are functioning as a sort of open question mark. You know, what is the yardstick that determines what you're keeping and what you're not, whether it's Penguin Classics or not? No matter what it is, what is the yardstick that determines whether or not you're keeping something? If you have a cute little volume of some now forgotten 1970s poet, and you like a couple of the poems in there, and you like the volume, is that enough reason to keep it if you never revisit it? And if I were to use the yardstick of only that, which is really the only yardstick you ever should use unless you're a collector, the only yardstick you should ever use for the books in your collection is, aside from the ones you haven't read, but I don't have many of those, is how often do you revisit it? Why keep something if you don't go back to it? To commemorate that you once liked it? Well, I have my memory for that, so I don't need the books so much. That's on my mind now. That is very much on my mind now. But anyway, that's your Daily Penguin. It's the collected essays of Arthur Miller. And we will move on tomorrow to somebody else and see what we can find then. So I'll wrap this up for now. I will see you then. Thank you, BookTube.